Hello, everyone. My name is Gerardo Ochoa. Looking at the world we live in, we have to be thankful for a number of things. One of those things that I'm thankful for is the environment. Unfortunately, despite our innovation, we as a people haven't always been the most careful with this very limited resource. The topic of my paper today concerns itself with the California Environmental Quality Act, otherwise known as CEQA, along with discussion on its reform. Over the course of my study on this subject, I was surprised to learn a number of things. Having worked in the Riverside County Executive Office, I was aware of CEQA and its limitations, but I was not aware of the many intricacies that make up the entire process. A number of things that I learned about CEQA were mostly word of mouth. Despite dealing with legislation, it wasn't always something that was brought up in great detail unless someone was looking to say something bad about it. Besides my education on the CEQA process, what really came as a highlight to me were the various ideas that concerned themselves with reform. Throughout the topic of reform, it was curious to see that the majority of the ideas that were presented in my readings were concerning themselves with the language found in CEQA. As mentioned earlier, throughout my time with the county, I didn't always hear a number of positive things about CEQA. And so one of those things that I did hear about was an example where the CEQA process took an extremely long time in order to approve a project. Specifically in this case, it was to place a sign in one of the areas of Riverside County that had a high automobile mortality rate. It was because of something like that that I wanted to look into the process a little more, especially because I had heard some of these stories claiming that CEQA had run amok in many cases. Besides this, another highlight of my paper was the comprehensive examination of the CEQA process along with the exemptions that are made for specific projects. Looking at the history of CEQA, it was interesting to see that some of those specific exemptions and how those exemptions were made into law by the state legislature. One such example of this is the Sacramento Kings Stadium, which essentially had a legislative bill crafted in order for it to pass and essentially be exempt from the CEQA process. It is because of situations like that that I was interested in looking at the CEQA process as a whole, along with reform for the CEQA process. As I mentioned, the environment is a limited resource, and for that very reason, I wanted to look at type of legislation, the type of legislation, and specifically the guidelines that mandate CEQA, in order to know how and why specifically certain projects are done the way they are so that we're able to preserve this very limited resource. Thank you.